Good evening to everyone in India, and good morning and good noon to those of you who would have joined from other time zones. I'm Satish from Breakthrough Science Society, Karnataka, and I'm hosting today's talk, which you're all eagerly awaiting. So let me start, by welcoming you all to this fourth lecture of J R Lakshmana Rao Birth Centenary Year 2021, and overall the fifth monthly event since January this year. If we consider the musical concert that happened at Gana Bharati Mysore in March. We have had talks so far on diverse topics, namely India's role in space exploration, Darwin's theory of evolution and its correctness, and also the interconnectedness of science, technology, and society. And in our own humble bid to pay homage to Professor J R Lakshmana Rao, a pioneer of popular science communication in Karnataka, founder of institutions like Karnataka Rajya Vijnana Parishad and publications like Bala Vijnana, an innovator of useful techniques to integrate English words into Kannada to enrich the science communication with the local population, and a man of diverse interests covering science and scientific thinking, music and gender equality, social justice and socialism. Today, we have chosen a topic that has become more necessary than ever: how to stay informed, right? So that's something that is bothering all of us. I say it is very relevant today uh, because of the explosive growth in misinformation, where fake news is spread unknowingly, and disinformation, where fake news is spread with intent. So, naturally, an integral part of how to stay informed is to be able to spot and to bust fake news. In short, the need today is to become a fact checking warrior. To help us on this journey, today we have Mr. Archis Chowdhury, a fact checker and reporter with Boom Fact Check. I'm sure many of you would have heard about Boom, but for those of you who may not have had a chance to know in the past, Boom is an independent digital journalism initiative with a mission to fight misinformation and to explain issues by way of verified facts. In fact, Boom is India's first and leading fact checking initiative, the first Indian member of the International Fact Checking Network, and also the first from India to partner with Facebook on its third party fact checking program. Archis, who is with us today, did his master's in media and political communication from the University of Amsterdam. We were just chatting about it a few minutes ago. And also comes with a prior experience working as a journalist with broadsheet newspapers and also communications for a social startup incubator before joining Boom team. And he's extensively worked on the areas of COVID pandemic and also the recent elections that happened in 5 states, covering largely the fake news as well as the fact checking in these areas. And in fact, he had also earlier given a talk last August on fake news. In fact, it was from the platform of India March for Science. And in fact, he called it as a fake news virus, I still remember. And in fact, he is the one who first sort of distinguished between misinformation and disinformation, in the talk, as I heard him speak. In fact, I would think a fake news virus, and maybe most of you would agree with me that it's perhaps a virus today which is as dangerous as the one that has caused the pandemic that we are living through today. So, hence like I said, the need is to become a fact-checking warrior, and hopefully, this talk today will help us, enable us, and enrich us in the journey. So, without further delay, I hand over to Archis. Over to you, Archis.
Hi, Satish. Thanks a lot for that kind introduction. A very good evening to all of you, and good afternoon and good morning based on wherever you are. I am a fact checker, as Satish said, and I'm working at Boom. And at Boom, we have been working kind of round the clock for as far as I can remember. I joined just ahead of the Pulwama attack, and I remember from that time onwards that it has been quite intense for us. We've been facing, like quite a lot of challenges, and seeing so much disinformation campaigns. As Satish said, those are the kind of fake news that are shared intently in an organized manner to mislead others. So you had multiple things. You had the general elections, you had the CAA protest, you had well, then you had COVID come in, and before that you had also had Delhi riots. All of these events, any major event that we've seen in the news cycle, is followed with a parallel kind of fake news cycle, that presents a distorted image of reality, and they're always running together. And the bigger the event is, the bigger will be the fake news campaign. And for example, take the death of Sushant Singh Rajput, and that created months of misinformation, and sometimes we still see that. So just say, so there's a war going on, very silent war, and it's an information war. You have information based on objective reality, and then you have information that is based on imagination, or is completely taken out of context, or is manipulated in some way or the other. Now everybody is affected by this by this war, that is going on, and it's up to you to decide whether you want to participate in fighting back, or you just want to let it happen passively. But I'll just warn you, it will affect you in one way or the other. So this presentation will tell you a little bit about how to be a fact-checking warrior. So yeah, so let's. I hope you all can see my presentation. So yeah, there you go. So I'll start off with a little quote by Russian chess grandmaster Garry Kimovich Kasparov. And in 2016, he tweeted, "The point of modern propaganda isn't only to misinform or push an agenda, it is to exhaust your critical thinking, to annihilate the truth." And he makes a great point, I feel. And he said this right after Trump won the election in 2016, and that is not a coincidence, I feel. And I know many of you listening are scientists, scholars, and science enthusiasts. So all of you know the importance of critical thinking. And the issue with fake news is it paints so many different scenarios, or it tries to impose such different realities that people get confused, and they're susceptible to accepting pretty much anything. So now, before we go any further, we're going to define this term a little, fake news. And I must say, it's a very oversimplification of something that is extremely vast, extremely complex. Here you have misinformation, urban legends, and myth. These are the kind of falsities that people actually believe in. They fall for it, and then they share it to to what they think is to inform others, basically. And then there's disinformation and hoaxes, and these are special. They are created by bad actors with ill intentions, and with the purpose of deceiving others for one reason or the other. And then you have yellow journalism. It's something that is I mean, and as an Indian, I kind of see it everywhere. The rumor mongering, and it is very, very old. Yellow journalism is a very old phenomenon. So this is basically what fake news broadly is. Now, this term doesn't really do justice to this whole thing that I just described, but I shall keep using this term now and again, because people relate to it and they understand it. So this is what I'm going to cover in today's talk. I'm going to go a little bit through the history of fake news, the different types of fake news, what our weaknesses are, how we are targeted, how tech companies, they come in and play an important role, and they set up the playground, how our rivals or our enemies come, the bad actors, they come and use this rigged playground to fight against us, and how we can fight back, the offensive, and how to build our defenses, that's the defensive, and at the end, how to conclude this war with a call for peace. So this is what I'm going to briefly cover. So first, let's start with the history of fake news. It's definitely not a new problem. It's been there for a long, long time. So to help you understand this, let's start with a little story. It's the story of Simon of Trent. In 1475, in the town of Trent in Italy, a little boy named Simon disappears. And a Franciscan preacher called Bernardino da Feltre, he gives a series of sermons claiming that the local Jews had murdered the child, drained his blood, and drank it to celebrate Passover. Now, this is a very old blood libel conspiracy theories, an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that has been going on, for a long time, and it still exists today. If you look at QAnon supporters and what they believe in, you'll find something very similar. So now these rumors started spreading like wildfire across the town of Trent. And the Prince Bishop of Trent, who is Johannes for Hinderbar, he orders that the city's entire Jewish community be arrested and tortured. And as a result, 15 Jews were found guilty and burned at the stake. This inspired the surrounding communities to commit similar atrocities against Jews. And all of this was done without a single shred of evidence. So now many of you may find similarities with what happened in Italy back then to that of the child kidnapping rumors in India that spread through the country on WhatsApp in 2017 and 2018, which resulted in over 33 deaths and 69 mob attacks around the country. If you remember these rumors, they were very much like they were intended to create suspicion towards any outsiders, to any out groups who are coming from outside, or any person, any foreigner comes to the village and speaks to a child becomes a target. So between 1475 Italy and 2018 India, the nature and effects of fake news has been largely the same, but a lot has changed. The way it spreads, the medium has completely changed, and that sets up a dangerous kind of situation for us that we need to be aware about. So in the pre-print era, rumors spread mostly through word of mouth, person to person, and it would take its time, but it would spread, and it would spread slowly, but still lead to some disastrous consequences. You had the Salem witch trials, which apparently investigation said that a certain family tried to settle some kind of dispute with other families, so they started some kind of rumors, and the rumors spread through the village and the towns, and then eventually people started a witch hunt for witches. Then came the printing press. You had posters and newspapers that were used to spread rumors to a much larger audience at the same time. And in the late 1800s, you had rival publishers, Joseph Pulitzer and William Hearst, engage in sensational journalism, yellow journalism, and rumor mongering in their respective publications to compete over readers, because they realized these kind of rumors caught readers' attention. So that was the print era. Then came broadcast. You had radio and television, and they had much more power as they could stimulate our senses a little more. These devices were in your living room, so they were a bit more intimate. You could hear somebody's voice, or you could see someone's face talking, so you could actually relate to something. So in 1938, on Halloween, filmmaker Orson Welles narrated an episode of War of the Worlds, which is a novel based on something, which is based on an H.G. Wells novel, and it was broadcast on Columbia Broadcasting System's radio network, the CBS radio network, and he dramatized an apparent attack by Martians on Earth. Now, the entire episode was simulated in a way to make it seem very realistic, and as a result, a lot of listeners ended up believing in it, and they allegedly had some kind of mass hysteria and panic, with people apparently falling for that drama and really believing it to be true, thinking that the world was going to end at the hands of Martians. Now, the scale of the panic is disputed because it had limited listeners, but it did seem to have freaked out some people, and such was the power of broadcast media, rumors, and the correct narrative style. It also set up Orson Welles' career later on. So then came the age of internet. It started off in the late 90s, the last decade, and really picked up, in the 2000s, in this century. And everything changed. With internet, everything changed. Of course, information spread a lot faster. You could share practically any type of media, and it's more and more accessible. Of course, anybody can access it. It's very easy. If you don't have a computer or a phone, you can just go to cyber cafe and pay 10 rupees for like 1 hour on the internet. Anybody can have it. And the thing that changed the most was that the flow of information became two directional. You had with TV, with radio, with the newspaper, you had information come to you, and some of it could be false, but this time it wasn't just coming to you. You were leaving some information. You were interacting with the internet, and you were leaving a data trail. And that is very important in understanding this whole issue. And then came the smartphones. In the last decade, smartphones became ubiquitous. It's in the bed with you when you sleep, it's in the car when you drive, and it's in the toilet with you every day when you're doing your morning rituals. Sounds funny, but it's kind of scary. These devices are very smart, in a way that they record everything that you do, and they could send it back to the devices makers. And the same thing goes for each and every app. And I don't know, some of you may be thinking that I am being a bit paranoid, but in reality, this is one of the core aspects of modern marketing, that you collect data on your customers and you target each and every individuals according to their interests for the highest possible chance of success. you know and that's how you get to see these ads for whatever you're surfing on the internet. Okay, so let's do a little recap. The medium was a lot more intimate before the 21st century. It was a lot less targeted. You were targeting entire demographics, entire communities, gender or age groups. And now you have devices that are a lot more intimate, closer to you. You can be micro targeted based on the information collected about you and you alone. They could create ads that are tailor made just for you based on your interests and nobody else's. And you have information, going both ways, which actually enables micro targeting. So this is basically what has happened. And technology has completely changed how we disseminate information, and that has given a completely new and very powerful wings to rumors, fake news. And rumors were always there, but now we're looking at something on a much larger scale. So again, let's just do a little recap of what are the different types of fake news. And I'm going to refer to something written by Claire Waddle of First Draft News, where she put out 7 different types of fake news. First, we had satire or parody. I mean, it is intended in a harmless way, but it could be shared. It has the potential for misinforming. People could fall for a piece of satire as real. That's why in today's date, a lot of good satirists, they would kind of make it obvious that this is a work of satire in some way or the other. Then you had misleading context, which is the misleading use of information to frame some kind of issue or an individual. You have imposter content, which is fake Twitter accounts, for example, say a fake Twitter account of Bill Gates saying vaccines are bad. That is imposter content. You have fabricated content, which is completely fabricated, 100% made to deceive others. You have false connections, where you have a headline saying something outrageous or something big, and the rest of the article does not say anything related to that at all. I can remember so many done by mainstream news outlets in India. And you have false context. It's actually one of the most common that we see, which is you take something that is completely true and you take it out of context and you represent it in a way that could mislead others. And then you have manipulated content, which is photoshopped images or doctored videos, audio being replaced or changed. So yeah, so these are the basic types of different types of fake news that we see every day. So now that you know about a little about fake news, we are going to come back to that war that I was talking about. So in this war, our biggest beliefs happen to be our biggest weaknesses. Our weakness happens to be our beliefs. And I this is a matter of confirmation bias. A lot of you may understand what it is, a lot of you may not. But your beliefs are actually where you're struck the most, and that's where your vulnerabilities lie. So what am I talking about? So I'm going to take a quote from Yuval Harari on his book 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. And he says that our views are shaped by our communities rather than individual rationality. For example, a person growing up in a, say, a religious household will follow that religion. A person growing up in a communist household will likely subscribe to communist ideology. And maybe later on in life, this person will learn how to rationally think and contest those ideas. But growing up, it's highly likely that this person will subscribe to the same views as those around them, their parents, their friends. So in this case, if you present people who have these strong beliefs with facts, you're just going to make them mad. and people are not going to accept it. They're going to reject. They're going to say something completely irrational. So that this issue is a matter of confirmation bias, basically. And another thing that I bring in is this. I don't know. A lot of you are going to laugh. Is this filmmaker called Vivek Agnihotri? During an interview with Abhinandan Sekhri of News Laundry, he said something like "Facts on our facts." He became a laughing stock. A lot of people found it funny. Even I found it funny at the time. But then I really thought about it, and I thought that yeah, maybe actually he had a point. Maybe he didn't mean it, but I that point kind of crept in my head, that how we interpret objective reality is kind of dependent on how we perceive the world. I'm going to take an extreme case. Say I am looking at a tree. Chances are that most people around me is going to see that tree. Okay, but maybe there's that one person who's not going to see the tree, who's going to see a tiger and run away. Now, this person may have taken a hallucinogen drug, or this person's having some episode of psychosis. Whatever it is, we know that I mean, it could be a matter of neurotransmitters going haywire. It's just that, I mean, it is an extreme example, but to get to the point, our beliefs, just like our perception, play a big role in how we look at the world. And we may all see the same colors, the same shapes, same objects, same sizes, but what we make of it overall, it can really differ from person to person. And it's really hard for one person to see it from the perspective of another, no matter how hard we try. So you must realize, while presenting facts to someone, that this person is looking at a completely different picture than you. Even though it makes complete sense to you, it may not make sense to others. So yeah, it's a very complicated problem that we are looking at. So coming back to the confirmation bias, it is basically a preference for information that goes according to your pre-existing beliefs, and a tendency to reject information that go against it. Now, who exhibits confirmation bias? We all have our biases. Actually, we are all subjected to confirmation bias, and all of us present here, me, you, and no matter how critically you think, you do have your biases based on your beliefs. Even science is biased. One of the most concerning things that is brought up consistently is the weird bias, or the Western educated, industrialized, rich and democratic bias in science. And what I'm talking about is the fact that most of the participants in studies, in whether it be social science research or genetic research, they come from European ancestry, and whereas they represent less than 15% of the world. So that completely skews the results, and in certain cases it could actually impair the results, and could have strong implications. So of course it is our job as non-Westerners, to kind of fill in that gap and catch up. But just to let you know that this exists for everything. So now that we know about this weakness of ours, this our weakness as in our own beliefs being our weakness, let's look at the playground, where we are fighting this war. And the big techs have a big role to play in this issue. So the tech conundrum is actually Facebook, Google, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon. These are the biggest ones. How they have been harnessing data for decades, and how they practically know everything about you. And this is based on the cookies they collect. Cookies are these small pieces of data that are stored in your laptop based on the websites you browse. So this is, I mean, if someone collects the cookies, they basically know about your browsing habits, and it is done in order to provide you with the correct advertisements and whatnot. So nowadays, many websites are required to ask your consent to track your cookies, and a lot of people might know what I'm talking about, but most people just click on accept all without reading through it, and this allows these websites or apps to basically get all your browsing history, and therefore your interests, your personality type, your preference, and your beliefs. And if you're visiting some alt-right websites, these platforms will know that you visited it. So when you search for information, these platforms provide you information based on what you'd like to see, rather than what you should see. It doesn't come in some kind of unbiased form. There is a structure. For example, if you do a Google search, there's a certain order in which the results come, and that is based on the cookies. That is based on what they know about you, and they know all this through powerful algorithms which process information from all that cookie you left. So if you keep seeing more and more information that confirms your pre-existing beliefs, you are more likely to stay on that platform and continue searching, because it's making you feel better. Your beliefs are being confirmed, so you feel like you're right. What this does is it puts you in a filter bubble, and you suddenly put in a space with others who share the exact same beliefs as you. So there is much less debate here. It's just some kind of intellectual isolation. You just locked in this box with people, and you're just confirming each other's views. And if you have some kind of prejudice, it just gets stronger and stronger. So let's talk about Facebook. And Facebook is because it's so popular, and the Facebook algorithm has been studied time and again, and it does pose a big problem. So a 2020 study by advocacy group Avas finds the Facebook algorithm to be quite troublesome, and they said that it's detrimental to public health. And we know that Facebook has gotten flack for spreading fake news for a long time. They have taken steps like starting their third-party fact-checking service, of which we are part of. So when Avas did their study, they found that only 16% of the misleading posts on health actually carried these fact check labels done by other third party fact checkers, and the rest did not have anything. And they found that pages and posts carrying misleading or false information were 4 times more viewed than those of the top leading health institutions. And their study ran until the beginning of COVID. So they did study the initial few months of COVID. And so, according to ours, Facebook's efforts in minimizing the spread of health-related misinformation was outperformed by the amplification of such misinformation by Facebook's own algorithm. And Facebook's algorithm has one thing and one thing in mind: it's to drive up user engagement. It's to keep people on the platform. It finds that conspiracy theories are better for keeping people on the platform, and by isolating them from others around them, offline connections are cut off, and you are suddenly connected to others who are more in tune with what you believe in, and instead of your friends who are being liberal, or they have kind of views that are suddenly you find not right. So you go look for it in some place else, and Facebook is the perfect place. So basically, Facebook is one example, but this just to let you know that the entire playground is rigged. And it is often said that if you're getting something for free, then you're the product. And indeed, in this case, your data, which tells everything about you, is the main product. And where is it going? To the highest bidder. Okay, now we come to the next part in the war, which is, well, your rivals, your adversary. And as Sun Tzu said, you should know your enemy. So it's time to really know about the entities that are targeting you. So who spreads fake news? They are those unsuspecting individuals who fall for everything and send it over to everybody. Think of them like the WhatsApp uncle, and I'm sure many of you would know someone like that. They do contribute to the spread of fake news, but they are more or less harmless. They can be reasoned with. There's somebody you can discuss it with them. But then they don't usually write. I mean, they always never write these messages, because they are written by somebody else. And these people who write these kind of messages that gets forwarded all the time, they are the ones that are a big problem. And these people, they're probably aware that it's fake. They write it, and they sometimes manipulate images and doctor videos. So they know what's going on. They know that they're creating something that is fake, and they share it. And these people are most likely tech savvy to be able to do all of this. So the question of media literacy being or lack of media literacy being one of the reasons of Facebook, it goes out of the window. And there have been studies that have shown that media literacy has a little less to do with spread of fake news than prejudice or beliefs. So these people are able to create groups and pages, edit and doctor videos, and forward these messages out to the right people, who will then forward it to others. So these are the ones that create the disinformation campaigns. So at an organization level, they could be corporations who wish to improve their image after some kind of bad publicity, or maybe they simply wish to influence people's behavior in a way that could be advantageous to them. Okay, or this is the more dangerous one. It could be the government or other state actors who wish to influence how communities interact and how people vote and how they consume other media. And this is a very tricky problem, as in, if those in power are doing it, it's very harder to fight back. You should look at the great hack that I think I recommended in the last talk as well. It's on Netflix, and it talks about the Cambridge Analytica scandal and how this firm there was a little data breach from Facebook, and these people, they collected a lot of data points on individuals around the world, and they went with all this data to different governments or different political parties to help them win elections, and very successfully so. And the investigations found that they had a big role to play, or they had some role to play in the Brexit campaign, which was fought very closely, and the Trump elections, the ones where he won, which again fought very closely. So it is again a very tricky situation, but it is real and it is happening. If and Cambridge Analytica, they were the unfortunate ones to be caught, to be the first one to do it, and then just get caught doing it. Now they have set the kind of they have set a completely different level of how elections can be fought, and everybody's doing it. For India, if you ask me who's doing it, name the top 10 parties, in terms of size. They're all doing it. I mean, if you go to Facebook, if you look at their ad libraries, and you would see that posts are targeted differently. You could, I mean, they don't give out a lot of information, but you can see there different kinds of targeting happen. All of this is done with a lot of research, okay, and it just doesn't. They're not just randomly doing things. So yeah, so micro targeting plays a big role here, and the data you leave actually enables them to target you with such propaganda. And basically that's how you get to see all those fake news. And most of it maybe seems very true because you tend to believe it. So now your adversaries. So how do you fight back? That is obviously the offensive strategies. There are a couple. I mean, the first one is the to be aware of your own biases. Of course, as I said, your biggest vulnerabilities are your beliefs. So you should be aware. I mean, it's okay to have biases; they're very natural, but know what they are, and for example, you could be inclined towards the left or right. You could be conservative or liberal, but know that these beliefs, if the stronger these beliefs are, the easier it is for you to fall prey to false information that conforms to this belief. So basically, you need to be to know this. If you're aware of these biases, it will help you understand which information you should question more. I'll come to this later. So being critical is always good. Being doubtful can never hurt. Basically, if anybody shares something and you know that it is false, suppose in a WhatsApp group, then a little expression of doubt is very useful in making sure people don't share it further. It is actually even more useful than sharing a fact check. As Yuval mentioned from his quote, people, when they're presented with facts that goes against their belief, they shut down. They become angry, and because they don't want to be proved wrong. So what works even better is basically raising a doubt. Are you sure it's true? What makes you think this is true? I'm just checking. Something like that. Something that sounds very diplomatic. So that this person is not made to feel like an idiot. This person is more likely to basically question that information if you present it, if you respond in that way. And being doubtful doesn't mean you shouldn't believe in anything. That you should just stop believing everything. That's not what it means. It just means that you should raise the bar on how you find something believable. Basically, the information presented to you, does it have a source? Can you check and verify if the source is reliable? If you check the report, or if you check the entire article or whatever is presented to you, can you find some form of investigation done? Did this article take into account some kind of authoritative voice on that topic? There are different levels by which you can tick mark the different boxes, after which you can believe in something. What I mean is, don't just believe in everything. Have raised questions, have some certain levels of expectations that need to be met before you can believe in it. So this is the offensive strategy. Now you come to defenses, and they're just as important. Of course, doubt is offensive and defensive. You can present doubts to stop someone from believing something, and for yourself as well, it is the most important thing. Okay, that is one thing. Secondly, as I said, you leave a data trail, and you leave information about yourself. That information is collected, and then you're targeted with fake news based on things that you're most likely to believe. So in all of this, improving privacy really helps, and a lot of people say, anti-privacy advocates, they say that, oh, if you're not in the wrong, then what do you have to hide? They couldn't be anything more incorrect than this. Would you basically, I'll ask a question to all of you. Would you be okay with somebody, say somebody from the government or from somebody from the company, sitting in your bedroom all the time, just writing what you're doing? Because if you're not doing wrong, what's the problem? Everybody can see whatever you're doing. So privacy is actually very important, and we know that it's not about you doing something wrong, it's about something wrong being done to you, based on information about you, based on knowing how you are. Not everybody should know how you are, personally. Only those who are close to you, who build relations with you over time, only they should be aware of how you are, right? So these bad actors, if they learn more about you, they can hurt you. So obviously privacy is extremely important. So basically, how to improve privacy? This is a little tricky, and you need to be a little tech savvy to get here. And it always helps to be a little tech savvy. If you're just blindly using internet, you're most likely to fall prey to it. So just be aware of all the different tools available out there. One thing which I feel is kind of the future of privacy, already the present of privacy as well, which is FOSS, free and open source softwares. Something like Linux, for example, which leaves open its source code, and so if you can view its source code, and I can actually tell how it behaves, whether it collects data and passes it through some backdoor channel. So by allowing developers and other users to view the source code, these softwares and these operating systems, they build trust. You can trust this operating system, that not some big organization is not collecting data. So Linux is very useful, and you can always run Linux with another operating system, because not every software runs on Linux. For example, Microsoft Office is very important. You can't run it on Linux. So you can run it on Windows or Mac, and you can run Linux on the side for any personal use, for anything basically. So that is one thing. And of course, Linux is also far superior to the others in terms of privacy and security. Okay, that's one thing. Another one, which is VPN. Now VPNs are a little expensive, and not everybody can afford it, but for those who can, it's quite important, and you should go for it. And it's 100% required for your privacy. Also, I know a lot of people use free VPNs, and I tell this to them again and again, that never use free VPNs, because they're too good to be true. VPN servers are expensive to run, and if someone's not charging you for a VPN service, they are basically using your data and selling it to make that money, and they're selling it to the highest bidder. You can be sure of that. So never use a free VPN. You can use a VPN on trial for a subscription. That is different thing. But something that gives you the service completely for free, they're not good. So if you are trying to choose a VPN service, I can give you some examples right here. Proton VPN, Nord, Express, Surfshark, TunnelBear, these are some of the best in the industry. I personally use Nord. I'm also interested in Proton VPN. Apparently it's quite safe. So maybe next, once my subscription runs out, I'll go over to Proton. So this is for the tech part, and how to build your defenses. So the last part of the war is obviously to have peace. That any successful war is the one that ends in peace. And to have peace, you need to reconcile with the other side. Basically, reconcile with those who don't share the same beliefs as you, and or who has completely opposing beliefs as you, because this is what fake news does. It drives you away. It polarizes, and it really rips apart society. And we have seen this all over the world, where fake news has prevailed. You know, so there's a lot of polarization, and misinformation, disinformation has a lot to do with it, by creating completely different worldview among people. So some Indians believe that it's the billionaires who are the real problem in the country. Some believe it's the Rohingyas or the illegal immigrants. What's really important is to bring them together and make them have a debate, so people can find out for themselves. Because if they remain in their filter bubbles, they'll never know. They'll never get ahead. So of course, not everybody can be engaged with. That's also important. And there's some minimum requirements of engagement. One is goodwill, and logic. Of course, you need to have, if the person has ill intentions, then you cannot engage with this person. Okay. And in some other cases, the person may have right intentions, but sometimes their beliefs are so entrenched that it can make them defy logic. And this could be a very common occurrences in family gatherings, or among friends. Sometimes it is a complex and frustrating situation, and in these cases you need to remain calm, you need to empathize and try your best to break that wall this person has put up with his or her beliefs. And you can do that in many ways. And again, expression of doubt helps more than outrightly attacking and saying, oh, you are just wrong, and I can find you information to prove you wrong. That doesn't always work. So get there later when this person is more likely to maybe understand what you're saying. You can show some data or statistics or some kind of report. So yeah. So another thing that's very important is that at the end of the day you need to have some common shared goals. I'll give an example. Like lately I've been interacting a lot with my school friends from this high school where I studied in Singapore. And it's been a while that I finished school, and we have very diverse views, going from the left to the right. And but there is this at least this certain shared and common goals. As I said, we all want the best for our countries, our societies, and we basically have we are basically ready to engage with with logic and reason. So despite there being very different views, we come to certain understandings, and this really opened my eyes as well. Okay, I can actually engage with people, and with people who have completely different views, and I can still come to understanding. It's not really about really pushing away or shunning away those who don't share your beliefs. It's really to be able to work together. Again, why I'm talking about this in fake news talk is because this is what fake news does. It really drives people away by creating completely different perceptions, and it's really frustrating, and it's really difficult to break that wall and come back again. So you need to be really active. You need to make active efforts to engage with people who are on the other side of the fence. Otherwise there can be no reconciliation. And well, this is how you fight fake news and become a fake news warrior. So I guess it's time for you guys to ask me questions. Thanks for listening, by the way.
Yeah. Uh, Thanks, Chis. I mean, I can see a lot of comments here. People saying it was a very informative, talk. So I think that's really exciting. Um, so I'll maybe ask audience if there are any questions. So there is one comment. I can just start with that while more questions come. This by a viewer called Vidya Digambar Rao. So she says, I think fake news spreads because people like to believe anything, even a falsehood, because it confirms their prior belief. I think that's how I think you basically started, the confirmation bias thing that you spoke about. I think
Exactly.
this basically talks the same thing. So there's one question here. How do you manage trolling when you do fact check?
Okay, so I mean, okay, so trolling is actually a tool to kind of it's a kind of censorship tool, basically. Trolling. Suppose you present an opposing view to a popular. I mean, you go against a popular view and present something. So any organization that doesn't benefit from your opinion will put out trolls on you to shut you up. Because trolls can be very hurtful to the person who's being trolled. So it's a simple censorship tool. The basics of trolling is that like you just don't engage. If you see a troll anywhere, don't respond. If somebody is, because this person is just not worth it. No matter how well you engage, no matter how great your debating skills are, you will never get anywhere by engaging with such people, because these people are paid, or these people are assigned to do just that, just to disengage, just to push you away and just to hurt you. So yeah, just when it comes to trolling, don't engage. We what we do is that we try to sometimes gather data on trolls. Basically, how, I mean, for example, there's a hashtag trend going on Twitter. We have this one guy who scrapes data and sees how many of those tweets carrying the hashtag are very similarly worded, or how many of them are tweeted at the same time. This lets us know how much trolling was there in that hashtag, to understand if it's manufactured, just to understand how much trolling was there behind that certain trend. but that's as far as we go. We never engage with trolls. As journalists, I mean, when I was a lot younger, and when all of this was a lot new to me, I would engage with people on the internet, and I would be so frustrated. So yeah, so just don't do that, because you'll never get anywhere.
Yeah, and these trolls really work on your emotions. They try to excite
Oh
you,
yeah,
provoke
definitely,
you, and so
definitely.
despite your best efforts, you'll be
Yeah,
provoked sometimes. Yes.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah. So the other question I see here is is from Anil. He says, "Why are conspiracy theories so popular, and how susceptible are we?"
Again, conspiracy theories actually, I mean, let's just understand that the world is very complex, and it is extremely complex. There is no one big organization controlling everything, as conspiracy theories suggest. But what these conspiracy theories they do is they simplify everything to this one concept, this one theory that certainly, if you believe in it, it kind of explains everything for you. And it's very comforting for people to believe in conspiracy theories, because otherwise they'd have to accept the chaos in the world, and a lot of people find that discomforting. These kind of people, very often are kind of isolated, secluded, and maybe they have friends, but they don't like to engage with them for some reason or the other. So usually when a person gets a little isolated and goes inside their shell, conspiracy theories come to help these people, and suddenly they connect to others who share these theories. And if you look at any QAnon believer, and if you look at their profiles, I mean, I don't know. I mean, every person that I've known who believe in QAnon, they all fit into that same profile of people who are a little isolated from society. People who have, like not much to do, unemployed very often, not always, but very often unemployed, and frustrated. And in such case, the world seems very difficult. So yeah, conspiracy theories come as big help for these people to understand the world. But then again, of course, conspiracy theories are anything but true, and they can lead to some devastating consequences, as we've seen with that insurrection attempt at the Capitol Hill in the United States.
Yeah, and even the pandemic that pandemic.
Yeah, even pandemic, exactly. That was like
Okay.
quite dangerous.
Yes. I think the questions are now raining, so you might have to be ready for a long haul here.
Sure, no worries.
So the next one is, from Raghunandan. He says, "What would be a signal for me to suspect that what I'm seeing may be fake? How do I
uh,
start suspecting?" Yeah.
so as I said, doubt is your foremost defense. So you should basically, if you find something and it has no source, you don't know who's written it, and like there seems to be no investigation done, or cited in that piece of article or video, then you should definitely start suspecting it as fake. If you get some information which has some source provided, which you can go and verify, and if you check the source, you'd find some kind of investigation done, and most likely an authoritative voice or researcher. Say if it's something about virus, and it's an article written by a reliable publication, and it cites some kind of virologist, then okay, you can start believing in this, because they have done all this work. If it doesn't include all this and say, oh, something dangerous is coming, it's going to attack all of you, and that's about it, it defines the danger, but that stops right there, there's something wrong with that, and you should not believe in it. So yeah, that's the basically.
Yeah.
Another
Um,
thing, actually, I mentioned here another thing, just to that same question. If you find something that feels very believable, then you should also watch out for that. And again, I said your beliefs are your biggest weakness. So you are naturally very critical to things that you don't believe in, but you don't treat information that goes with your beliefs in the same way. So those things that you don't like, things that you find very believable, too good to be true, well, you really need to check those, because that's where the problem lies. That's where you can fall prey to fake news.
the next one is from Brinda Rao. She's asking, "Can you suggest some good fact-checking sites? I mean, apart from Boom, of course."
Yeah, sure. I mean, I mean, all you need to do is go to the IFCN website, International Fact Checking Network. Look at all the IFCN sites, because IFCN, when they give the certification, there's a certain, certain standards, a criteria that they need to meet to be part of IFCN, certification, IFCN network. So, all the IFCN certified websites in India, they're all doing pretty good job. You have other news outlets, that have opened up their fact checking departments as well. You have Quint, you have Alt News, which is also quite popular. So you have all these other websites. Of course, Boom is also working around the clock for this. So you can, and a lot of these websites, you can actually reach out to them if you have some kind of misinformation, or if you have some message that you suspect. You can reach out to Boom, for example, on our WhatsApp helpline, or through Twitter. You can just tag us on something, and we will check it out. So yeah, so you have all these websites, and I think the best way to check is go through that IFCN list, and you will find all the good ones there.
Yeah. Right. So, Archis, if you share the Boom WhatsApp helpline number, I'll put it in the comment section after the talk for people to.
Okay, sure. I'll share it with you.
Yeah, yeah. So the next one uh, is from Anuradha. She's asking, what would you consider as red flags when you receive a forward? I think a part of it, I think you mentioned when you were
Yeah.
talking about signals.
Yeah, again, like I just mentioned the same thing. Red flags
Yeah.
are one things that are very believable, and that seem too good to be true. That's a red flag. And things that don't have any kind of source, things which doesn't have any kind of investigation, and just basically telling you things. No authoritative voice, no researcher, on that topic that's being discussed. All of these are red flags, basically, and they should all be treated with a lot of doubt, basically.
Yeah, and could the language also be very provocative, emotional? Things like test checking. I mean, saying you're sleeping while your house is burning, or it tries to put a point in a patriotism, or tries to
Yeah,
provoke. Yeah. So if it is like
definitely.
more on emotion and less on let's say reason and facts, that
Yeah,
could be
yeah,
a red flag.
definitely. I agree with you. Actually, the more dramatic it
Yeah.
feels, the more likely it is to be fake news. But not always. Sometimes even I fall for it. Like so, a lot of people in some time back, when COVID was raging, a lot of people send me this message to check. Oh, is it true? Is it true? And I was busy. I was checking through this message, and I saw the name Black Fungus, and I said, oh no, it's probably not, because Black Fungus sounded to me like some kind of Marvel villain. It sounded too dramatic. But then I read some article about mucormycosis being black fungus, and then suddenly I knew that, oh, that is actually true. So I had to reach out to all the people who had asked me about black fungus, and
Right.
told
Right.
them that, okay, wait, like this is actually true.
Right.
And I
Right.
fell for it because I found it to be not true, because black fungus, the name sounds so dramatic. But in general, it's okay to reserve your beliefs and not believe in something instantly, and do the groundwork, check it out before believing in it, even if it is true. You'd rather find out or be sure that it's true before believing in it, rather than believing in something without any kind of work or research. So yeah, dramatic, evocative, emotional names, red flags.
Yeah, I think one of the viewers, Karthik, has made a similar point here that we often see emotion being used as a trigger point, which drives the spread of fake news around. So how do you
Yeah.
manage that? I think we just discussed that. So the next
uh,
question is, yeah,
yeah,
you
sure,
want
go
to
ahead,
add
go ahead.
anything?
No, again, like so from our side, basically, how we do our fact checks is that we keep all kinds of opinionated statements away from our fact checks and all our articles. So that helps us keep our biases away from the articles, and also it keeps it from evoking emotions too much, to like trigger some kind of I don't know, some kind of confirmation bias in you. So that is how we do our fact checks, basically.
Okay. So the next one is from Nagraj. He's he does compliment you for having a very balanced approach, and then the question is, uh, fact checking, expressing a doubt, challenging takes time. By the time you have done the fact check, the lie has spread far and wide. How do you deal with this asymmetry?
So I mean, at this point, it's true that the lie spreads a lot faster, and I think this is not just for today. This has been always the case. So I mean, that is a much bigger battle that not of all of us can fight, actually. In order to fight that kind of a battle, you need to have the government step in. You need to have much bigger bodies step in and help us out. We as individuals, or even communities, we cannot fight that battle simply. Like, we cannot stop the spread of fake news, because there are always those who will fall for something and spread it out. What you can do is, you can just focus on your community, on your family, and you can engage people, you can engage with people you have good relations with, people who trust you and you trust them. These are the people you should focus on. And that big chunk, or that that lie spreading all over the world, we just cannot fight it by ourselves like that. So yeah, getting into that, it would be frustrating. We'd only end up failing basically.
Okay. So there is a remark from Janaki in one of the viewers that it's an excellent talk. I hope the younger generation are made aware of this so that they can make an informed choice. Yes, ma'am. That's really
I
the
hope so.
idea behind the talk
I
like
hope so.
this. Yeah. And moving on. So there is a viewer Prasad Sampath. He's asking, is there any legal framework to stop or punish fake news or hoax news?
Well, nothing very specific, but of course there are certain ways, where you can, take actions. If it's defaming, or if something is meant, if you, I mean, under the Cyber Security Act as well, there are many parts. I mean, there are many ways you can act against someone legally. But the issue is, in India's case, if you look back, you'd see barely any case has been taken against, any action has been, legal action has been taken against people. Worst to worst case, people have been asked to, people's Twitter accounts have been suspended. That's the most I have heard of. I mean, it sometimes happens that somebody gets arrested for being the administrator of a WhatsApp group which spread some rumor, but that is very recent phenomenon. And so it's true that it is something that can be improved upon, and obviously a lot of researchers have made a lot of suggestions on how this can be improved, how you can provide a proper framework to basically take actions against those, or even proceed, like have some kind of, I don't know, even start an investigation. Basically, even that is very difficult here, and tech companies could come in and help here as well, but not normally they don't, because user engagement is top priority. So this is something that is basically kind of gray and not very useful currently. Again, I mean, these problems are, even though rumor mongering is quite old, the problem we are looking at now, fake news, in modern new tech and in the age of internet and smartphone, is so new, and its effects are just so overwhelming that like it's very hard to come up with these things in such a short span of time. But hopefully, maybe in the next 10 years or 20 years, we will have a proper legal framework, to really take action and put a stop to this. Again, as I said, for this kind of thing to happen, the government needs to step in and cooperate with people, with other civic bodies and NGOs basically, and and with the media, of course. Let's not forget the media plays a big role, and the mainstream media is also very much responsible for sharing fake news. So again, like, all of these actors need to step in and work together to create that kind of platform or environment.
Okay. So here is a comment from the Breakthrough Science Society Karnataka admin account that if any of the viewers wish to be part of Breakthrough Science Society, they can fill the membership form where the link is given in the comment. I'll move on. Yeah. So there is a question from Shashidhar. He's asking, is posting on web-based platforms similar to writing graffiti on the walls?
Well, it depends on the platform. I mean, if it's about Facebook, well, it's not actually, it's not actually writing graffitis on the wall. There's only that many people who will see your graffiti, but when you put something on Facebook, you can actually make a lot more people read it, and
Much broader reach.
nobody's, exactly, it's a much
Mhm.
broader reach. So yeah, it is not the same thing. I mean, I agree that graffitis can be also misleading. A lot of political parties use graffiti. I mean, I come from West Bengal. Graffiti is everywhere, all political graffiti. But I mean, it's nothing as compared to the Facebook pages that they're working on right now. There's no comparison at all.
Yeah. So, viewers, there is this WhatsApp helpline of Boom Fact Check in the comments. So, you can use it for getting live feeds or also to ask questions on any news that you suspect to be fake. While there are questions, so I have one, Archie. So, one common argument that I come across is, people saying, I mean, it's related to what you said as, facts are not facts. I'm curious to know, what really, set you thinking about that statement. But my question is, there's this debate about your fact versus my fact, right?
Yeah.
And people sort of tend to reduce fact also to a dimension of perception, or a dimension of
Mm.
my prejudice. So how would you respond to that? Because even the newspapers have their biases, they have their political inclinations. So which one do you take as authentic, for instance? So this is a big debate that happens today.
Okay, so yeah, it's true. This fact, facts being different from for different people is it's. I mean, obviously, objective reality is the same for everybody. Again, as I said, if there's a tree in front of me, there's a tree in front of everybody who's standing next to me. It can't be a tiger. But it's possible that somebody can see it as a tiger. And as I said, it's a rare case. This person could have an episode of psychosis or could be hallucinating. And that's an extreme case. That just goes on to show that it is possible that somebody perceives reality in a completely different way. And here, maybe it's triggered by the neurotransmitters, but on other cases, it could be that this person's beliefs are so entrenched in something that any factual information presented to this person will be warped in a completely different way. And that doesn't mean that objective reality is changing for the both of us. It remains still the same, but this person's perception is completely different, and this person perceives this entire factual information that you provided as completely differently from you. So it's very hard for one person to really perceive things from the view of another person. Like, I really can't tell how a colorblind person sees colors. So it's, I mean, for someone who's not colorblind, it's nearly impossible to imagine how someone who's colorblind sees it. So this is something we need to understand when it comes to reconciling. As I said, that you need to be able to understand where this person is coming from. Does this person have fear of a certain group? Why does that fear, or how does that fear originate? Is there some kind of history? So I mean, if it's someone you care about, you can really go into the depth and really discuss this out. But know that objective reality cannot change for two people. It remains the same. uh, and as for choosing which media, well, it can be it has to be something that is an ongoing process. You find the New York Times very believable, but you can't always just blindly believe the New York Times. And you should still critically analyze what they're seeing. You should see how much of investigations have been put, and this should be true for anybody, basically. I mean, that doesn't mean you can't have a list of reliable media where, okay, like if you're in a hurry, you'd like to check it from their websites. And when you build that list of reliable media outlets, you build it over time. You keep reading their information time and again, and every time you do your checks, you find them to meet your expectations. Then you see, okay, I will put them in the list of reliable media. If someone is suddenly starting to post things that feel a little weird, it has happened to me for a couple of media outlets in India. I'm not going to name them, but I put them in the list of reliable media. They're slowly kind of shifting away to unreliable, because I've seen them put out things where all the editorial processes were not respected. Somebody messed up here and there, but it's still stuck to me as something odd, and therefore I pushed it in the different list. So yeah, you can always make these lists, but it should not be very fixed. It should be fluid, based on how they're reporting and how their editorial decisions are.
Yeah. And another phenomenon I've seen in the recent times, Archis, is the offenders themselves becoming fact checkers.
Hmm.
That's a very curious development that I've seen, that there are examples where uh, news portals which have actually spread fake news. I would rather think it's more of a disinformation rather misinformation scenario, actually trying to become fact checkers, right? So,
Yeah.
so that's sort of making this fact check itself becoming a little from being an apolitical endeavor to something that's opinionated. So how would you respond to that?
Well, it is a retaliatory technique, basically. So you're presenting misinformation, disinformation, and then suddenly you have these fact checkers that are debunking it and suddenly undoing your work. So how do you fight back? You create your own fact checking, and and as you said, these are opinionated, and there is those basic standards of fact checking are not met here. But to those who subscribe to those views, they will get the solace of, oh, we also have this fact check, and it will get a lot of views among those people, and they will present it to others in the same way that you present a fact check from someone you trust to others. And people who subscribe to those websites and believe in those websites will do the same. So it's giving that option to your subscribers, basically, to oh wait, you are looking at our stories being debunked, don't worry, we're going to also give you some fact checks to debunk this. It's a retaliatory measure, but obviously it's hollow. If you look through their fact checks, you wouldn't see them in any IFCN certification. That doesn't mean that all websites who don't have IFCN certification are all wrong. Again, there are certain fact checking websites who do a pretty good job at fact checking and are still not IFCN certified. So yeah, but if you want to know whether they are good actors, bad actors, it's not really that difficult. You just go to their website, look at their headlines. It is enough. If you look at their front page, it's enough to tell you what they're. If all of the stories, if they're targeting the same kind of groups, individuals, you know that it's wrong. That you can move on to another.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Karthik's question was taken up on how do we see emotion being used as a trigger. I think that was taken up earlier. So, in the interest of time, I'll just move on. Maybe a couple of more questions, and we can maybe let's see if we can stop. So, there's a question from Prabhuraj here. He's asking how to fight fake news when governments or large organizations are involved in generating and supporting fake news.
Again, as I said before, this is a little tricky issue. When the government is involved in creating and spreading fake news, it becomes a lot more complex. And again, you cannot fight them directly. You cannot just go against them directly. As fact checkers, all we can do is, if we find some piece of misinformation on any government portal, government handle, obviously it's a priority to fact check that, because so many people follow those. But that is the most we can do. We cannot take on the government in their propaganda machinery. Okay, what you can do again is to just make sure that people around you are not affected by it. And it needs to be like a community service. That's something you do for your community, and that's your reach. That's all you can do in case of any kind of disinformation campaign. Those are the people you can help. I mean, trying to go any further will result in failure because it's such a big problem. It'll just be frustrating, when you try to see that, oh, I want to help all these people. You post Facebook messages, but only those, who are, in your closed list or who subscribe to the same views as you will get to read those posts because, thank you, Facebook algorithm. So, yeah. So, so again, that is a very tricky question. It is again an ongoing battle, and we are figuring it out how to take on such big entities as the government. And when I say we, it's fact checkers all around the world, because again, it's an international process happening in so many different countries.
Right. Yeah. So the next one is what do you say to people who claim that fact checking websites are biased? I think in some way this was answered. I guess anything you want to add on this, Archis? I thought
Well,
it's
I
taken up.
mean, yes, it could be, there could be instances of bias in certain websites, but what you really need to check is their journalistic integrity here, whether they are only targeting this one group or whether they're also, fact check. Basically, for example, if you are in the left and, and are you only doing fact checks that are targeting the right, or fact, are you doing only doing fact checks on misinformation that come from the right wing and targeting the left, or are you also doing fact checks on misinformation that are targeting the right, and probably coming from the opposition or from left groups? So if you see a bit of both, then you can see that okay, maybe it's reliable, even though their opinions here and there, they do still do a holistic work. They take into accounts, they're aware of their biases, and they still do a good job in covering all different grounds. So I guess that's something you can check.
Okay. There is a question that Anil has put up, which he got, from a contact. So basically, he agrees with your point that it's relatively easier to check science-related news because there is a greater amount of credibility that it carries. But how would one verify political and social news, especially when there are multiple websites of different ideologies all pushing their agenda?
Yeah, this is again another tricky situation, and it's something that we face so much during and especially after the elections in West Bengal, uh, especially regarding to political violence.
Yeah.
So I know there was a lot of misinformation. There was a lot of rumors going on about lynchings of Hindus in West Bengal after the violence, and they were taking cherry picking in events that happened, real events of violence. But if you look at these events, what we did was we called up local police, or we checked if other media had reported, local media had reported it, and if multiple local media had reported it, then we found that there was no communal. It's just a matter of political violence of one party members attacking the other. They're all of the same religion, so there's no question of one community attacking the other. And so basically you can take events and switch it around. But if you really want to verify it, well, I mean, the first and foremost way, which is also a little tricky, would be, in this case, to get in touch with the local police and, ask them what happened, take their thing into account, look at all the local media and how they reported it, and see if they match. And if they all of them match together, then possibly it is true. And if there's a lot of mismatch, then something wrong is happening, and you need to be aware and not share this, just anyhow. So yeah, again, this is a tricky situation. It obviously depends on case to case. In a lot of cases, if an image or video has been shared, you can take a screenshot of the video, or take the image and do a reverse image search and see if it existed before. A lot of the times, in cases of fake news, we find that it has existed. Things have been repurposed or reused to share with new claims. So in those cases, a little trick called the reverse image search is very important. Can help you find. In other cases, you would require more intensive investigations.
Okay. I think we have come to the end of questions, and maybe I'll close this with a couple of quick questions from my side, Archis. So, one of
Sure.
them is, is that the typically the problem starts with the source of funding. Most of the let's say news portals tend to toe the line of the people who fund them. So, how are these check sites today are funded? How can they really remain impartial, or or is it possible, how the whole funding process works here? Is there something that you
Uh,
would like to share?
Yeah, sure. So funding is obviously a difficult question here as well. For a lot of media outlets, who are much bigger in size, and when they create their fact-checking portal, they already are kind of well funded. For
Yes.
example, India Today, India Today, even Times has a fact check as well. So they are already well funded. They don't have an issue. For smaller organizations like us, we have to depend here and there. We have a subscription model where people are subscribing to our website. That is one source. Also our employers are Facebook, Google, traffic, all of these things bring us funding. So we are very much dependent on all that. Obviously it's a very precarious situation. One thing falls off, and like it's trouble for us. So it's an ongoing battle for every day for us to really make sure that we are doing a good job, so like things are right for us. uh, and in terms of partiality and impartiality, all you need to know is how this website or news outlet is reporting on their own funders. For example, this was a question that was raised on Washington Post, and they did a fairly good job, because they're funded by Amazon. It's owned by Amazon. So how they're reporting on Amazon is how you see whether they're impartial or not. So when they do a good job on kind of showing when Amazon goes wrong, that Washington Post is in the in good hands. It's doing a good job. So yeah, about impartiality, that's the best way to check always. And yeah, media. I mean, I think most of you know that when it comes to India, it's in a bad state overall. It's either that you subscribe to a certain view, you're in this one camp where you're conforming to everything, trying to please some bigger entities, and you are well taken care of. And if you're in the other camp where you're critical, you're asking questions, you're always in kind of struggle. And that is just what it is. That is, I mean, most of you already know this. So yeah.
I think I'll close it with the last question here, and maybe any further questions we can maybe post the responses in the Facebook, comment section. So the question here is, I would take it because it's slightly different from what you have so far discussed. It's asking, how do we handle these advertisements, which make some false claims like 100% pure water, which is not a reality. So
Yeah,
how
I
do you,
think I think they. It's very again. Those are all very tricky areas. Advertisement is another area where like they can get away with a lot of things, a lot of false claims. So the only things that we can go after are claims that can cause immediate harm, that could cause some kind of violence, or that could cause people to take some steps that would cause harm to their health. Those are the only things we can actually go after. All these claims about 100% water, I mean, yes, obviously it sounds ridiculous, it can't be true, but it's not something we can go after them actually. I think I'm not sure if there's any legal framework regarding this advertisement, but there's a lot of leeway given to companies when it comes to advertisement. You can make a lot of claims and get away with things, and I think they have these little tricks they play. They won't say 100%, they'll say 99.99% pure. So you don't say 100%. If something goes wrong, you can say, oh wait, we said 99.99. There's always a 0.1% chance that they're not right. So they do these little tricks to get away from the situation. So yeah.
I think we will uh, close this with these questions. And I mean, I must really thank Archis for this very energetic, lively, and informative, conversation, and also the audience for really making it so lively. In fact, it also means that this is a really hot issue, right?
Yeah, very good questions, by the way.
Given
Yeah.
the kind of exchanges we've had here, shows. And also I think I can see a lot of comments where people have felt this has been a very useful conversation.
Okay.
Let me,
I'm
on
glad.
behalf of Breakthrough Science Society Karnataka, let me thank Archis again for the second time. Uh,
My pleasure.
so let's keep in touch, and I think this
Sure.
is an ongoing battle, not going to be an easy win. So I think a lot more
Sure.
to be done. In fact, it just reminds me that one of the most famous fake news that is spread during the pandemic time is this Japanese Nobel laureate, Dr. Tosuko Honjo, right?
That's Honjo,
Uh,
yeah.
who said it's an artificial virus, which was
Hmm.
constructed in a lab in Wuhan, right? In
Yeah.
fact, that has been debunked so often, but still, I could see just last week the same fake news being spread in a local paper. I mean, it's
Yeah.
all
True.
spread in English. It is all now debunked, but then there is this
Mm.
local language where
Yeah.
the
Vernacular
reality is
and
not
native language. Yeah.
not at reach.
Regional
So this
language.
is
True.
a long haul, and I think it's a long battle. But I think you guys are doing a great job and
Oh,
helping
thank you.
even the public to really educate ourselves. Let's keep this conversation going. It works
Yeah,
both
and
ways.
of course, you for the viewers, you can always help us by subscribing, or by
Oh, yeah,
taking
yeah,
part, by sending us,
yeah,
any kind of fake news that you can always reach out to us. In
yeah, yeah,
either ways, you will be helping us, to keep this battle going on.
yeah.
Just to
Right.
put
And
it out
as
there.
absolutely, and as Keka Chakravarti has mentioned here, all age groups should be checking fake news. It's not just
Oh yeah, yeah,
somebody's
definitely,
job.
definitely.
Yeah. So there's a question, Archie, more personal. So are you on Twitter? If so, what's the handle?
I am on Twitter. It's Chowdhury,
Yeah, if you
Chowdhuris.
could put it in the private chat, maybe
I,
no,
I will
Shreya,
just
one
put it
of them
there.
can put it in the comment section. Okay, so with that, folks, will close the chat today. Thanks for a great participation, and let's meet up next month, because this is an ongoing series of lectures. This is the fourth in the series, as I mentioned, and so the fifth one is going to be in the third week of June. So let's keep it going and see you again. Stay safe, stay at home. Bye.
Bye.